Good evening, everyone. Welcome to American Advocates, episode 44, or at least it should be episode 44 in accordance with what my moderator, Glenn, is saying in chat. We got a lot to discuss today. A lot happened today. And I wasn't sure how big of a news story it would wind up turning out to be because Joe Kent has not been a major name that's talked about oftentimes within this administration. But he was one of the guys that Trump had discussed as one of his key players in his administration, brought him up on stage in the past before, and celebrated him being a part of his administration, giving him a lot of credibility and saying Trump himself saying we have a special place in my administration for someone like Joe Kent, served our nation proud, did us proud, served our nation, served his country, and he did. And we're going to cover all of that because that's in essence what makes this so meaningful, honestly, this resignation from Joe Kent now. It personally makes me feel more validated, again, and vindicated when I come on here and I criticize this administration so much and I say, listen, it's not going well. There's a lot of problems. They're not living up to their promises. They're failing the American people. Trump has forfeited his mandate. And you see these MAGA cheerleader channels all the time. They're insistent upon us being panicans, and even they're calling us traitors now for criticizing the administration. We're supposed to, apparently, according to the MAGA cultists, and that's, of course, the people. I voted for Trump, but the MAGA cultists at this point are the people who voted for Trump and insist that you never question him. And they create this fantasy situation and story centered around President Donald Trump now, where Trump is a grandmaster 5D chess player because QAnon told them as much. And so these people, honest to God now, run around and they say, you just don't know the full story. You don't have the big picture. You're not a critical thinker. You don't understand what Trump's doing. I do, though, because I'm loyal to Trump. This is what the MAGA cultists will have you believe. And so they run around saying this, and they say, no, we're getting everything we voted for. They insist on it. And then they call you a panican for saying, I don't think we're getting what we voted for. And on top of it, I think we're actually getting what we voted against. Not to mention, I don't think there's a well thought out plan in place here. And I think this is going to end terribly. And I think this is going to hurt America and Americans. And they go, you're just a panican. Everything's going well. MAGA is more unified than ever. And what happens? Well, now you look at the top story of the day, and Trump's what's the title again for this guy? The is it secretary? Something like that. Counter-terrorist. Trump's guy in the counter-terrorist department, sort of an intelligence kind of department within the administration. He resigns today. Joe Kent. And we're going to go over his statement here and the implications of this. And really just goes to show once again just how ridiculous everything really is behind the scenes, despite the fact that they want you to think that MAGA is unified, that Trump has a plan, they're all sticking this out together, they're unified and working towards greatness and victory. They're not. It's very clear they're not, and this today proved it. So let's take a look at it. Glenn says news is booming. News is booming today. There's a little bit more to cover as well. We got NATO. I'm going to discuss NATO, our NATO allies. Once again, when it comes to NATO, I'll just give you a hint right now. I also feel vindicated with NATO and what's developing with NATO. You know, I've been very critical of NATO on this channel. Unfortunately, I'm in between a rock and a hard place with NATO because I don't like NATO, but in a way, I like what they're doing right now. So we'll cover that in a little bit. But first and foremost, be sure to like the stream if you haven't already, because otherwise you're just fucking useless to me. So like the stream and subscribe to the channel right now and make sure post notifications are on when you do. It helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. Now, let's get on with it. Here's Joe Kent and his resignation letter. This was a post by Joe Kent today, about 10 hours ago on his page. And he says, after much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counter-Terrorism Center effective today. I cannot, in good conscience, support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. It has been an honor serving under the President of the United States and under Tulsi Gabbard, and leading the professionals at NCTC. May God bless America. I'm going to take a look at his full statement here. It is worth reading, and I do want to read it, so I'll pull that up right now on my computer so I can read it a little bit better. But he says a lot in his statement, and the MAGA seething and cope over this news today is cult-like as predicted, and once again, just born out of delusion, and honestly, it's becoming like ironic at this point, and I'll cover that in a second too, because it really does just continue to expose the fact that, you know, you can vote for Trump like I did. You can be a social conservative like I am, and a fiscal conservative like I am. And you can still criticize this administration and still come to terms with reality. But if you can't do that, you're part of this cult. And as a result, the cult-like speak that you see that's centered around events like this is just so obvious. It's just completely obvious unless you are just willingly remaining delusional at this point. But I want to read his statement out here. He reveals a lot in it, and it's important to read a statement from a guy like this who's on the inside and in the intelligence community, essentially. The Counter-Terrorism Center is essentially, I would consider, an intelligence community, within this Trump administration. And I want to point something else out at the end of this, too, when it comes to some members who wind up resigning from the intelligence community and what they wind up saying, it seems, pretty much every time when they do. But first, let's take a look at his statement. He says in his statement, President Trump, after much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counter-Terrorism Center effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. I support the values and the foreign policies that you campaigned on in 2016, 2020, 2024, which you enacted in your first term. Until June of 2025, you understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. In your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and by defeating ISIS. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States and that you should strike now. There was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. As a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times, and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. I pray that you will reflect upon what we are doing in Iran and who we are doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further toward decline and chaos. You hold the cards. It was an honor to serve in your administration and to serve our great nation. Joseph Kent, Director of National Counter-Terrorism Center. So, a lot is being said there, and I like that he did this. This was important for him to do, and this was, despite what Trump MAGA cultists would have you believe, this was purely a moral decision. And so, by that lens, and by that his own statement here, it's inappropriate to make any sort of professional judgment against somebody like this. He believes he's doing the right thing by doing this. And to be frank with you, I believe he's doing the right thing by doing this because he's pointing out the same thing that we're starting to conclude. Most people are starting to conclude. And to be fair, some people have concluded for years now that our government does seem to be a lot more occupied by Israeli influence than most Americans would be comfortable with. And as a result of that, he views it, no doubt, as him serving the interest of a foreign government who's occupying the United States. So what else is he supposed to do, is really the question. To which, of course, I don't think there's an answer. I think this is the answer. I think the answer is this is a prominent key player in the Trump administration who held an important role, and he saw more than what he had ever seen before and ultimately made this determination and decided he cannot support it and therefore can no longer stay as a part of it. I actually applaud that. And this is the kind of statement we need more of. We need more people to take a stand like this because it points to an undeniable truth then at that point, especially when you look at the pattern of other people who have followed in his shoes, or not followed in his shoes, other people whose shoes he's followed in. Because I'll tell you this right now, this is what I wanted to first and foremost say. One of the patterns when it comes to intelligence community officials, members, whatever they are, workers, CIA agents particularly is what I'm discussing here. You won't tend to find a whole slew of former CIA agents. It seems like they spend an entire career in there, and even to some degree, their offspring in some cases winds up following them down that path. However, you will occasionally stumble across a former CIA agent who quit. And there's about a handful of them that I know of who have quit not long after being hired for the CIA. And there's a common theme amongst all of them. And that is, of course, that they quit and they all of a sudden become very anti-Israel. And now it seems like we're seeing that with Joseph Kent. And what I want to point out here is beyond this resignation letter. Oh, let me get back to my other screen. Beyond this resignation letter, people were pointing this out. So you immediately have, of course, surprise, surprise. Who do you think jumped all over this? Jigsaw. Oh, I mean Laura Loomer. And Laura Loomer said, "What happened, Joe Kent? Joe Kent. Here is your post from 2024." In which you said Iran has been trying to kill President Trump since 2020. Today, in your resignation letter, you said Iran poses no threat to the U.S. Did Netanyahu hold a gun to your head when you tweeted this in September 2024? Today, you said Israel controls the Trump admin and convinced Trump Iran was a threat. But here you are in your own words saying Iran is a threat. See below. And this is an old tweet from Joe Kent, and this is supposed to be the gotcha moment here that they're pointing out to try to ruin Joe Kent's credibility and essentially accuse him of potentially being a corrupted agent bought by, what a lot of people online are now starting to accuse in situations like this of big Qatar funding. I've seen, we always now are pointing to things like AIPAC entity, these foreign lobbyist groups, and it's always centered around Israel, and this bothers them. And so now you see this. I think it's mostly bullshit. I think it's mostly made up. Hey, Beck fan, how are you? I see John Boy's in here, and I see the Wait Experience. Hey, I remember you. Did BB get blown up? People are wondering that, actually. Those supposed AI videos of him are kind of weird. John Boy says, "Preach, my friend. They lied to all of us, and they just jeopardized everything we worked for." Yep. A patriot would never stay, and he is a true patriot. I agree with that, John Boy. I really do. So, Glenn's laughing probably at the Jigsaw reference. It's so true. She had that ugly, horrendous plastic surgery done, and she looks like Jigsaw. It's so bad. Anyways, this is supposed to be the gotcha moment from Joe Kent. And it says, Iran has been after Trump since January of 2020, after he ordered the targeted killing of their terrorist Qasem Soleimani. This isn't a new threat. The Secret Service consistently failing to secure Trump is new. We need to figure out exactly why these failures keep happening. Now, this is supposed to be a gotcha moment, and I've since seen some other gotcha moments posted around Joe Kent of former tweets of his where he's saying stuff like we should take out Iran or their ballistic missiles and we should support Israel October 7th, yada, yada, yada. It's not actually the gotcha moment that they think it is, though, because the bottom line is at least from a public perception standpoint, how this will be perceived, but I also think accurately perceived, because I think the truth is in the perception of this and in the perception that Joe Kent has allowed us to see. Essentially, this is a guy who was running for office and he failed, but Trump liked him so much he appointed him anyway to an intelligence kind of community aspect here in counter-terrorism, which means by default, Joe Kent wound up receiving far more information, classified information, on all of the Middle East dealings, Iran, Israel, etc. And what's happened with that information? Well, it took somebody like Joe Kent, who just a few years ago actually denounced publicly Nick Fuentes for his anti-Semitic stances. This was Joe Kent. He denounced Nick Fuentes for being anti-Semitic and too anti-Israel. This was 2 or 3 years ago when he was on his campaign trail while he was running for election. I believe he was trying to run as a senator or something like that, or governor perhaps. I can't remember now. All of a sudden, now he gets in this position. He has access to all of this information, and he can see basically the bigger picture. He knows stuff we don't. And what happens to him? Well, much like the CIA agents, who I've referenced, a few of them, not by name, of course, but there's a handful of them that I know of, who are former CIA agents, which is unusual, but they quit, and they're now, all of a sudden, they have a radically different view on Israel, and they're very outspoken about it. Now you have Joe Kent doing the same thing. So is this a gotcha moment for Laura Loomer and the pro-Israel lobby? To that I say no, it isn't actually. This just moves the ball down the court more towards the lobby that is becoming more and more anti-Israel. Because this is the guy who gets in there denouncing Nick Fuentes and saying he's too anti-Israel, and within a year is all of a sudden anti-Israel himself, it seems. So ask yourself why that is. Ask yourself, how can a guy like this, who goes in, who Trump touts as a sharp guy, a guy who, by the way, served his country and fought in the Middle East wars of the 2000s. He was a Green Beret, and he did 11 tours in the Middle East. Joe Kent did, right? So this guy's been in there. He's been over in that part of the world. He fought for this country, and he did so honorably, okay? Then he gets in this position with all that information and decides, oh shit, Israel's influencing way too much of our politics. They forced their hand on this, and I can no longer serve under this administration because it's clearly being occupied by Israel. That is Joe Kent's conclusion. So it's not a flex to point out the fact that Joe Kent a few years ago had the opposite stance. It actually points out the problem that's pretty much staring us in our faces at this point when it comes to our politics. But you will see this, and you will see more and more people posting this thinking this is the gotcha moment, and they're trying to point to some sort of weird theory now. I've seen some of them trying to say that there's some Middle East Muslim country that is now bribing our politicians. I'm just not buying that. I'm not buying that. This is nothing new. It's just you don't hear about this too much. And the reason why this made news is because this is a guy within the Trump administration currently who did this today, and did so, it seems like he sprung this on the administration. It doesn't seem like they were expecting this. God bless Israel. Israel first. Nice rage bait. I can respect that. I just hope we can all recover the gas, the stocks, and for our retirement's sake, says John Boy. Retirement, John Boy? How old are you? Because I'm in my 30s, man, and I've already accepted the fact that I don't think my generation, being the millennials, I don't think we are going to retire. I don't think that's going to be possible. Hey, Eddie, welcome, man. Appreciate you. American Advocates, I like Trump no matter what. You can't change my mind. John Boy says, hey, Glenn, I'm 42, okay, and I have a good head start. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, John Boy, so I wish you the best on retirement, man. If you're in the right field, maybe you can do that. You know, like a lot of law enforcement agents will retire in their mid-40s or early 50s. So, and hey, don't put out too much of your personal info online, but hopefully you're in the right field where that will be possible, because it definitely could be. But for a lot of people, even your age, I doubt they'll be able to retire. Hopefully you'll be able to, though. 42 puts you at the top of the millennial range / the youngest of the Gen X range, I believe. So you're right on that line, actually, I think. But yeah. Okay. Anyways, I wanted to point that out first and foremost when it comes to Joe Kent, like I stated. So we have this, and we have people thinking that this is the flex right now, right? And it's not. it points to a different pattern here. Now, beyond that, he stated in his statement, once again, to pull that up, he stated that, let me find that real fast. Let me drink some water, too. He stated, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Now, that's Joe Kent stating that, right? And again, he's in the administration. You would assume he has information to be able to make that kind of a statement rather than just assuming that that statement's correct. I'm assuming he has or had access to information that sort of adds credibility to him making that kind of a statement. But that's the next thing, of course, that the MAGA cultists were attacking. They're saying, well, he's a double agent, and he was a possible leaker, and we think he was the one leaking all of this sensitive intelligence agency information out to the mainstream media. And so he can't be trusted, right? Now they're saying that about him. This is somebody, of course, that hardly anybody has talked about up until today. And now that he's announced his resignation and literally cited Israel's involvement in our government and the Iran war as the reason why, now all of a sudden it's a massive problem, and he's a leaker, and he's compromised, and he's being bought by foreign Muslim countries, and he doesn't know anything. What does he know anyway, right? That's now the narrative being crafted by the MAGA cultists. But he nevertheless did say this. And to back this up, I want to point something else out that's important to note here too. Joe Kent's not the only one who had concluded this, apparently, because early on last year, this was the statement from Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. And this was in March 26th of 2025. The Trump administration got right on Iran's case, of course, as they should, by the way. We should be monitoring Iran. I've never been against that, and I've never thought that Iran was some peaceful country that wanted to coexist with us peacefully in the world. I've always felt like Iran is a potential sitting enemy. That much I will say. And so early on in Trump's administration last year, of course, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was all over it. But her conclusion here, which Trump ultimately not only ignored, but actually, according to rumored reports, stated that he felt it was highly inaccurate and possibly biased. It says the United States intelligence community continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khomeini has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. Tulsi Gabbard, she signed it. This was March 26, 2025. Trump would discard that information in favor of other intelligence information. I think we all know where that very likely came from. And on that information, he would then act, obviously, in Operation Midnight Hammer last summer, striking Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz, and then claiming total annihilation, complete destruction of all their centrifuges, their nuclear capabilities. We wiped it out. Iran shouldn't be a problem, right? And then, of course, fast forward not even a year later, and now we're back there in an even higher degree. Iran's gone scorched earth. They acted unpredictably in a way that it seems the Trump administration did not predict would happen, catching us off guard, it seems. And now we have Marines being deployed over there. Boots on the ground seems more likely. The Strait of Hormuz is a disaster. And we did this once again based off of intelligence that just doesn't seem to be turning out to be accurate. All of the actual written intelligence that we have now seems to be quite to the contrary of what we're being told from not only Tulsi Gabbard, but now in his resignation letter today by Joe Kent as well, who, like I said, I assume has credible information that he's been able to look at to conclude what he concluded in his resignation statement. So I wanted to point that out as well, because I've made this comparison in the past, and a lot of boomer conservatives don't even want to admit this reality being real when it comes to the 2003 Iraq war. They just think all Arabs are bad, and they think we should decimate that region and stay involved in there and go to war there all the time and defend Israel, right? So you can't really argue it with boomers, but nevertheless, they'll tell you. And even people who are trying to defend these actions, J.D. Vance himself will say it's important we don't overlearn, is a direct quote from J.D. Vance. It's important we do not overlearn from the history and from the past. This is Trump now, not George Bush, not Barack Obama, not Joe Biden. This is Trump now. So we shouldn't overlearn from the mistakes of the past, because Trump will handle it better, is essentially what J.D. Vance said, our vice president, in regards to that war and in the context of people citing the faulty intelligence that led us into the 2003 Iraq war, where thousands of American lives were lost. Funny enough, according to all of the reports that we have access to, no Israeli soldiers were killed in the Iraq war. Thousands of Americans were, though, and they didn't even have weapons of mass destruction. And so I've brought that up, I think rightfully so, in the past as my reasoning behind being so against what's happening right now. And I am just increasingly more vindicated when information like this is put out, when actions like this is taken, where Joe Kent resigns, and plain as day states, Israel influenced this. They have a powerful American lobby, and that's why we're there in the Middle East. Not because of any credible intelligence that our people here in America could muster up. In fact, like I stated just a second ago, quite the contrary to it, in accordance to what Tulsi Gabbard concluded March 26th of last year. So I wanted to make that point because it's very, very important that people understand why I have the views that I have. And truthfully, it's very important people see all of this come together, because most people aren't presented with what's happening right now in this way. They watch Fox News, or, to be honest with you, in some cases, even the liberal mainstream media, and that's where they're getting their information from. And that's a trickle of information that's been controlled on purpose to set some sort of a narrative that they want. And even a lot of the liberal mainstream media is still pro-war because big money is involved. So, just wanted to point that out there. Stop everything. My God. Beck fan with a $5 super chat, paying his tariff. I call that 2.5 tariffs. On this channel, if you're going to pay a tariff, $2 is enough per user, unless you're extra dumb, which Beck fan's not. I see he's being critical of something, though. Green screen is gay. Put this towards a wall flag. Well, it's St. Patrick's Day, so this is green for St. Patrick's Day. I don't know what you're talking about, Beck fan. Obviously, it's St. Patrick's Day. I wanted green in the background, so that's why that's there. I mean, come on now. I'm very prepared for St. Patrick's Day. That's why it was up last night when I went live. That's why it's up tonight. It's my favorite color. I do have a little Irish in me, so this will probably be up for the foreseeable future, but I reject the notion that this is a green screen. That's actually a conspiracy theory at this point, and Tulsi Gabbard is going to investigate it and conclude that there are no green screens of mass destruction here on this channel, all right? But thank you nevertheless for the tariff, the $5 tariff. I really appreciate it. Let me see. I saw some other chats were coming in here, so let's see if what people are saying. Like this gay guy here, Zach Certain 3809 says, "Do you ever get tired of being crybaby victims?" I don't know who's crying here. It sounds like you're crying about me, potentially crying. You're crying about me. You're crying about what you think I'm doing. So you're the crybaby, Zach. Sweet Chili says hi. Sweet Chili says Iran. We're not Iran supporters on this channel whatsoever. That country can literally go fuck itself for all I care. And yeah, F the USA. Yeah, okay, Sweet Chili. Yeah, we love the USA on this channel. This is the best country in the world. We're the world's hyperpower. None can stand up to us. I don't support this war, but I certainly love my country. It beats Iran by, I don't know, 18,000 miles. I mean, there's no comparison. Iran is a disgusting, nasty country. So let's set the record straight right there, okay? Eddie says, "You're right, American Advocate. Iran was a waste of money." It was, yeah. It still is. What are we on now? What is this? Hang on, let me see. Day 17, is it? Usually it's reported on this. Day 17 now, right? Or is it day 18 even? I don't even know. And at $1 billion or more per day, plus an initial $2.5 or $3 billion is what I read for the initial strikes, we're well over $20 billion spent now. We're closing in on $25 billion spent over the last 2.5 weeks. Massive waste of money. And then you'll hear people from the pro-Israel lobby now, and this is what I noticed all last year, but I didn't say anything because when you hear it up front, you're like, yeah, I understand where they're coming from. Only $3.3 billion a year to Israel. I guess nowadays $1 billion being spent by the government, tragically, is actually not that much. So 3.3 billion, you're like, oh yeah, oh, I see what they're saying. It's not that much. But then you find out, oh, but every time they manage to convince us to go back to the Middle East, which by the way seems to be every 2, 3, 4 years, and then when we're suckered in there, it's expensive. Well, now all of a sudden it's 25 billion at least. It could be a lot more than that. Then all of a sudden Congress has to meet and prepare emergency spending packages for Israel. We send oil to them, everything. We lose American lives for them. Our military's out there, which costs money. So it ultimately winds up being a fuck ton more than $3.3 billion a year. Well, Israelis have nukes. Where's the checks on them, says Sweet Chili. What do you mean, where's the checks on them? Well, we tried the checks on them, and you know what happened? Our president, JFK, said, absolutely not. Israel cannot have nukes. Our president, JFK, said that. Yeah. I mean, I'll piece it together for you. Essentially, he tells Israel, no, you can't have nukes. And then they say, oh, okay, we understand. Hey, it's a nice day. You want to go for a convertible ride? Make sure not to sit on the seat, though. Sit on the trunk of the car. Sit on the trunk of the car and go on a nice convertible ride with the top down so the people can see you because they just love you, Mr. President. They fucking love you. And that's how that went. So the last real major politician in our country to say no to Israel. So yeah, the checks and balances, we tried it. We tried it. By stop everything, does that also include immigration, says Infidel? Well, I stop everything when tariffs come in on this channel, Infidel. Beck fan paid a $5 tariff. We got to stop everything. Read his super chat. You know how it goes. By stop everything, does that mean immigration for Trump? Sadly, yeah, it seems that way. Sadly it does. It shouldn't be, but it does. We spend more than that in fraud, says Infidel. Well, that's true, and that's another problem as well. And that really tells you, Infidel, where our priorities are. Is it on cracking down on the waste, fraud, and spending and abuse? No. Now they'll put on the performative show of having J.D. Vance now monitor that situation, but truthfully, that's what Doge was created to be doing. Only Doge was so good at it with Elon Musk, they decided, oh, we got to put a stop to that. So Doge was no more. Elon was kicked out, though he was only supposed to be temporary anyway. Elon wound up being kicked out, and now they're reforming it, but with J.D. Vance. And do we trust that? You'd be wise not to. And so when it comes to the fraud in this country, yeah, it's going on at a massive scale. Who discovered that? Some kid named Nick Shirley. Not the Department of Justice, not anybody within the Trump administration, not even local law enforcement agents discovered it. And in some cases, like in Minnesota, it had actually already been discovered years ago, and nothing was done about it under Biden, and nothing was going to be done about it under this administration until Nick Shirley posted a viral video about it, and now they have to pretend like they care. You know, that's what's happening. But that, once again, should tell you the priorities here. It's not about fraud. They don't care that we're being stolen from a bunch of other countries. So long as they get their $3.3 billion, we can stay here and rot for all they care. By the way, it's not USA, it's Israel that owns you now, says Sweet Chili. Yeah, it seems that way. That won't be forever, though. And I'm going to show a poll at the end of this stream that shows that. Eddie says, is them having a nuke eventually a concern to you? Are you talking Iran or Israel? Because the answer to both is yes. Beckfan77 says, somewhere Donald Rumsfeld's mustache is very pleased. Release the JFK files, Donald, says Glenn. Yeah, he did say that would happen, and we haven't gotten those yet either, have we? So you just said it is not the USA, it's Israel. Yeah, it is. It's literally Israel. Sweet Chili, I don't know what kind of trap you think you're putting me on. But chances are you and I agree with the current state of American politics. I just think you're a fucking scumbag for liking Iran and putting their flag in my chat. USA is the only country that matters on this channel. I'm the American advocate. I'm not Iran advocates. I don't care about Iran. If Iran was scorched tomorrow by a nuke, I might be mad at the country that launched it because of possible World War III implications, but I would not shed a single solitary tear for Iran nor any of its people. I literally don't give a fuck about anybody that lives in Iran. I don't care about Persian liberation. I don't care about the Iranian regime. I don't care about their way of life. I don't care about their women being oppressed. I care about none of it. None. That's what I want to make clear. If you want to discuss our politics here in this country and how Israel's influencing everything, and you want to discuss how that and why that's happening and why this Iran war I think is bullshit, feel free to do so. If you want to vent to me about Israel, at this point I'm willing to do that with you. I'm willing to complain about Israel too with you. But I'm not an Iran supporter. Fuck that country. Hopefully that's clear, so you don't need to sit in my chat to try to gauge what side I'm on. When it comes to Iran and Israel, I'm not on any side. I am about the Monroe Doctrine. America should conquer the Western Hemisphere and let the entire Eastern Old World burn to the ground. That whole Eastern part of the world is scumfuckery. It's all a bunch of bullshit, corruption, outdated, old establishment nonsense, gross-ass countries, China, Russia, Ukraine. We fund Ukraine for some reason. Now we have Iran and Israel and the Saudis and whatever else. I despise that part of the world. Europe has betrayed its own people. They're allowing all of the Muslims into their country to replace Europeans. Britain's trying to save itself, and I hope they do. But all of these countries, Africa, Australia, I despise all of them. I care only about the United States of America, the greatest country on earth. Okay? That should make it very clear. Nick Shirley W. says infidel. Absolutely, yes. I'm not concerned about nukes at all, even if they are flying. Yeah, why concern yourself over mutual destruction? Well, this is the thing, infidel, too. It's why maybe nukes are blown out of proportion a little bit more than they should be, which is crazy to say, I know, but there is the mutual destruction component here that acts as the deterrent for countries to not launch them. But I don't disagree with the notion of preventing more countries from developing them either. I think it's a net positive for humanity to universally try to agree across the board with all countries that nukes they should have never been invented. They're not good for the world, and they should be decommissioned, destroyed, and definitely not created. Getting countries to go along with that is a whole different story, and it's actually very unrealistic. So, and if anything, one of my points of criticism for this Trump administration doing this with Iran and claiming this was about a country trying to develop nuclear warheads is that it's had the opposite effect now of what we would really want. Unless we just only cared about Iran developing nuclear warheads, which would be actually hypocritical because truly the agenda, like I said, should be we shouldn't want any countries currently that don't have nuclear warheads to start developing them. That should be universally applied at this point. Either you have nuclear warheads or you'll never have them is how it should go. But because of this, other countries are taking a look around now and they're saying, well, shit, we should either ramp up our production of nuclear warheads or we should start working ourselves towards producing nuclear warheads for the first time in our country. We see that with Poland and France. South Korea, I can't remember if South Korea has them, but I know South Korea is now starting to get a little pissed about all of this. They're moving towards that. And other countries now are talking about ramping up their production of nuclear warheads. And it's all because of what's happening right now. So that's actually one of the criticisms I've levied against this Trump administration. It's actually kind of making it worse in some ways. A lot of American flags from Glenn. Appreciate that. That's where we disagree. I support spreading freedom, says Infidel. I don't. It's not our problem. It's costly. It's a waste of our time. It literally never works. It's up to the individuals of their own country to either take their country back or submit to tyrannical rule. And either way, I don't need to hear about it. I don't need to know about it. And I certainly am not obligated to care about it. It's not my problem. I care about America, my quality of life here, and my fellow Americans. What happens over in Iran is truthfully none of my business. Because if we cared about that, then I guess we should really, though I know you'll say they have nukes and that's why we can't, well, we should really start targeting North Korea then, shouldn't we? But we all know that won't happen. Mandatory reading homework for chat, Monroe Doctrine. Yeah, probably most people already know what it is, but, well, they weren't invented as a weapon. They were supposed to be limitless clean energy. Well, of course, but here we are. It doesn't matter what the intention was. It matters what the result is. Okay, so getting back on point here now. Intelligence communities, our own intelligence communities, versus foreign intelligence, which, of course, for some reason we always prioritize. Well, Israel's in closer proximity, so they're more reliable. Okay. We'll just forget about Iraq 2003 then. Moving on, though. Moving on from this topic, I wanted to get into this next. So we have Joe Kent, right? We have Joe Kent retiring pretty much out of the blue, it seems, and literally saying why. Just shifting. In my opinion, this borderline shifts the Overton window because this is a high-level government official now, a Trump administration member, now publicly saying Israel convinced us to do this war and Israel has too much influence. That's the implication of Joe Kent's retirement, right? Meanwhile, you have the MAGA cultists sitting in a room on fire at this point, like the meme. This is great. Everything's fine. And it's not. You're just a panicking. We're not. We're seeing reality at this point. But even beyond that, it's not just Trump's own people abandoning him, but he went off on a tirade today when it comes to NATO. Or maybe this was yesterday, late last night perhaps. Either way, it was one of the other focal points story-wise today, and rightfully so. And I feel vindicated on this for several different reasons. I'll explain why. But he says, the United States, I'll read it in his voice, actually. I'm still, at some point, even as frustrating as it all is, even as stressful as it all is, at some point you do got to just like laugh at it, So I'll read it in his voice. The United States has been informed by most of our NATO allies that they don't want to get involved with our military operation against the terrorist regime of Iran in the Middle East. This, despite the fact that almost every country strongly agreed with what we are doing and that Iran cannot in any way, shape, or form be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. I am not surprised by their action, however, because I always considered NATO, where we spend hundreds of billions of dollars per year protecting these same countries, to be a one-way street. We will protect them, but they will do nothing for us in particular in a time of need. Fortunately, we have decimated Iran's military. Their navy is gone, their air force is gone, their anti-aircraft and radar is gone, and perhaps most importantly, their leaders are at virtually every level are gone, never to threaten us, our Middle Eastern allies, Israel, or the world again. Because of the fact that we have had such military success, we no longer need or desire the NATO countries' assistance. We never did. Likewise, Japan, Australia, or South Korea. So, why was he saying this? Well, the news yesterday, that I actually didn't get to when I went live, the news yesterday was, of course, that President Donald Trump had actually requested that NATO assist us in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this has been a political nightmare for President Donald Trump and a strategical nightmare. And it almost seems, can't say this for sure, but it does almost seem as if the Trump administration was wholly unprepared for Iran's response to being struck by our U.S. military. So that's what's happening right now, and he made the request, like pretty openly and publicly, the formal request for our NATO allies to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz to assist, our U.S. military, predominantly our Navy, and now Israel's joining in actually, to assist us in helping the oil tankers pass through the Strait of Hormuz because Iran has gone fully homicidal with the Strait of Hormuz. They're vowing to keep it choked up and locked down for the United States and Israel at any cost, and they're vowing to do so no matter how the United States responds. So whether or not we pull out from the region now and declare victory, like some people want Trump to do, or whether we stay, and even worse yet, perhaps put boots on the ground, it does not matter. The Iranian regime vows to keep that strait now choked up to hurt us politically. And so Trump was calling on NATO to send the naval vessels there. The response was almost universally across the board. Actually, with NATO, no, it wasn't so it was almost universally across the board a resounding no from our NATO allies. So, and most of all, some of the countries that I've even said when I've stated in the past and why I feel vindicated on this, because you all know my stance here on this channel, I despise NATO. I think they are a useless group when it comes to them being allied with us. They're parasitic leeches. NATO's been around for what I always say is 67 years too long because it's 77 years old. And at the time of its creation after World War II, General Eisenhower, he was a general at the time, even stated that NATO's purpose really only needs 10 years. If it goes on longer than that, it should be treated as an absolute failure. and we basically wanted NATO to be around to help protect Europe, a very weakened Europe after World War II, from Russian advances. Russia, of course, served as one of the good guys in World War II towards the very end, and they helped us defeat Germany essentially because Hitler didn't know when to stop, and ultimately wound up trying to wage a war on two fronts and invade Russia, and failed miserably. This left Europe weakened, and Russia under the rule of a certain someone who's oftentimes equated to Hitler, decided, I can start gobbling this up. We obviously didn't want that to happen. So NATO was created, and it was only supposed to exist for 10 years, literally to help Europe get back on its feet, redevelop its societies, rebuild its cities, build up its economy, and strengthen a military for defense purposes against Russia, and therefore we were going to pull out after that. Of course, it's now been 77 years, and the entire time we've been gypped by our NATO allies, we've been gypped by these European countries who, for the most part, almost through the entirety of the duration of NATO's existence, have refused to contribute their portion of their GDP towards a defense budget like agreed upon, because they just know that we'll cover it for them. We have 100 military bases spanning across the European front with no less than 100,000 total troops stationed there at any given time. So they're quite safe, and they know it, and they take advantage of it. And instead of funding their own defense and military, they reallocate those funds towards their perfect socialist societies that they always like to brag about, and use in the context of not understanding why America, the greatest nation and country on earth, doesn't have their perfect socialist societies. It's because we subsidize it. So I despise NATO, and I always have. They are a useless group of countries that don't even like us. They just pretend to like us because they like our money and our support and our protection, but they don't like that because of that, they feel like we have a say in their politics. So they grandstand against us on the public stage every chance they get, but then privately, they get on their knees and beg every president that runs our country for more money to keep them safe and to fuel their socialist societies and economy. And I've always advocated for us to pull out of NATO and leave them. And I've always advocated for the fact that they don't have our best interest at heart. Now, I'm vindicated on that. Whether or not I agree with this war, and I don't, and I'm actually almost happy that Trump received this response, because it's going to be another painful reminder to this administration of how big of a mistake this was to go back to the Middle East. Nevertheless, this vindicates my opinions on pretty much everything, on not only just the Iran war, but on our NATO allies as well. When we actually could use them, and truthfully, they owe it to us. They do, after all these years, it's actually the least they could do. Risk a couple of their naval vessels being blown up by Iranian drones. It's already happening to us and oil tankers on the strait anyway. It is the least they could do. And they all universally say no. But then even worse for President Donald Trump, I've stated before, the one good country in NATO, in my opinion, was Italy, with their president, Giorgia Meloni. She loves Donald Trump, actually, or at least it seemed that way. And she probably still does. But even she has pulled her support from President Donald Trump in regards to this Iran war. She does not support it, and Italy also refused amongst all of our other NATO allies. That should tell you something even more. And then on top of it, he does mention Japan, Australia, which of course was never going to back us, and South Korea, which I don't think is that great of an ally to us, though we need to keep an eye on them for the future sake of the Indo-Pacific region, of course, and China. So South Korea is going to be allied with us whether they like it or not, and whether we like it or not. But South Korea is going down the same path society-wise that our country did in the 70s. They're embracing feminism and all kinds of destructive Western values, and we're seeing their birth rates declining to like pretty much non-existence. So South Korea is already struggling as it is. I don't like them. But Japan has... I think they elected their first female president, whatever that's supposed to mean. You know how I feel about women in politics on this channel. Nevertheless, she does love Trump, and she's actually tougher. She's tougher on Trump on immigration than he is. He's pretty much a cuck. Trump is a cuck on immigration nowadays. In fact, today news even came out that he's expanding the H-1B visa program for farmers so that they can hire more migrant workers, because apparently Americans don't want to do the job. And it's actually, of course, we all know the Americans are happy to do the job, but not for the slave wages that the migrant workers on H-1B visas were being paid which is like $3 an hour, and they're expected to work 12-hour days. Americans will rightfully come in and say, whoa there, it's 8-hour days and it's $8.50 an hour at least, and that's minimum wage. So he's a cuck on immigration. This Japanese president, she isn't, and she actually loves Trump. But even she won't support this. And so this is something Trump needed to have happen. Because once again now, the big picture here when it comes to this Iran war, the big picture here is everyone instinctually knows across the world, and we're seeing it more and more now with Joe Kent today, within his own administration, without a doubt. Tulsi Gabbard definitely has the same opinion as Joseph Kent, by the way. She just hasn't resigned yet. She's not putting out a letter like Kent did, okay? But Tulsi Gabbard at one point was selling shirts on her own campaign. It literally said, no wars in Iran. So she shares the same opinion as Joe Kent. There's no doubt about it. She's been very outspoken against Middle East wars. And that's the big picture here, is everyone instinctually across the world knows how bad of an idea this is, except for President Donald Trump and the members of his administration within his cabinet. And this is definitely because, once again, Israel has demanded this at our expense. And there's so many ways that these expenses could catch up to America in the future. I want to say something. Why is it, do you think, why is it that this administration, this time around with President Donald Trump, at least initially, he was so obsessed with getting Greenland? Why is it that he talks about the Golden Dome more? Why is it that it's rumored that many of his cabinet members are now buying doomsday bunkers? Why is Pam Bondi living on a military base? Why is that happening? Why is all of that happening? Could it be because, to our detriment, our country's detriment, we are choosing to support a foreign country that buys our alliance and our friendship, and then uses us at our expense, uses us at the cost of our blood and treasure to fulfill their massively unpopular agenda, increasingly unpopular agenda, as evident now with NATO's response. None of them want to support Israel. And could it be that if we continue down this path, that we will not only ruin our country, this will cost us money, ruin our cost of living even more. This is being done at the expense of all the young Americans in this country. Make no mistake about it. This war won't hurt boomers. They're going to be dead in 10 years. And they're sucking up retirement right now after selling off all of our birthright overseas, right? That disgusting generation. And so they're fine. But this is being done at the expense of the young generations in both blood and treasure. Our future, our birthright being sold again. Now to Israel. We are the goy. We are just here to be used for Israel's greater purpose. And once our usefulness is up, we will ultimately be discarded. They believe in that. They believe we are the lesser than. So could it be that this unpopular agenda, combined with Iran's vicious response to being struck in Tehran, that it seems that this administration was not prepared for, striking all of the nearby allies and neighbors, now the cost of oil going up. What's oil futures at today? Well, it rose to 95. It rose again to 95. It keeps dipping, but the bottom line is it's over 90. It's not sitting in a good range. Brent crude at 103 today, last time I checked. Yeah, 103. That's more of the global oil market, Brent crude, right? So we have now created a geographical, a worldwide impact pretty much at this point because of this war. This is not making us more popular with other countries or our allies. It's making us less popular. Some of our allies have had to take the brunt of other missiles. So does it start to make a little more sense to you that the Golden Dome is a project that Trump is hell-bent on succeeding with and building completely? And if it does, then you must understand where I'm going with this. The natural question is, why do we need the Golden Dome? Well, I think the answer is becoming more evident. I think there's a very realistic reality that if we continue to elect these idiotic, clearly evangelically influenced political leaders like President Donald Trump, his entire religious board of whatever it's called is full of female pastors, which is just absolute fucking, that's an abomination in and of itself, right? There should be no female pastors. Women are to remain silent in the church for a reason. But they're in his ear right now, and they're telling him that Israel is full of God's chosen people. So we must serve their agenda at any expense, because Genesis 12 says God will bless those who bless Israel, a verse that nobody understands. Nobody in his administration seems to understand the actual proper context of. And so could it be that we do this and continue to do this at our own detriment and at the expense of any remaining popularity that we have or good standing that we have left with the rest of the countries, and they wind up allying against us in some way, shape, or form? And now the Golden Dome must be called in, and we must have the Golden Dome to keep us safe. There's a reason why Israel has the Iron Dome, right? And look at what's happening with Israel right now. Israel is in like a 7-front war. I posted this, actually. Let me go to it. I posted this on my X. You should follow me. I have the link to my X account linked in the chat, by the way. You should go follow me there right now. Like every post that I post and comment on every post, because X is super engagement based. And I'm trying to grow this X. It's hard, though. I posted this, though, because this is the way to do it. Pop quiz. Which country in the Middle East is currently waging war with 7 other neighboring countries and bombing all of them? The answer, Iran. Just kidding. It's Israel. People aren't looking at this properly. And when you recognize this, when you recognize that Israel is a warmongering nation with a warmonger as their leader, that's Bibi Netanyahu, they are waging a 7-front war. The second we started attacking Tehran, it was within, 36 hours, Israel started bombing Lebanon as well. They're just all over the place. They're telling us Turkey's now a future threat to them. It won't be long before they're telling us that Jordan and Egypt are problems as well. And if we have stupid goy leaders in office who believe evangelical dispensationalist Christians, then we will continue serving their purpose and other countries will hate us more and more. Next thing you know, our Golden Dome has to come into play. Israel has the Iron Dome because they do this. They bomb 7 neighboring countries and they need an Iron Dome as a result because all those countries get pissed and bomb them back. And then when that happens, they call us and they say, oh my, do you see this? These anti-Semites are attacking us. And we go, oh man, that's our greatest ally. Let's send our young 21-year-old soldiers over there to be distractions and die while Israeli intelligence figures out how to hit them the hardest. And this is how it plays out all the time. And it's getting fucking annoying. And it's going to end. This will not be how America operates in the future. It's just not. The young generations will not stand for this anymore. I'll take a look at some chats if there are any. They were never our enemies at all, says Godzook9856. Who are you talking about? Hey, bold as a lion. Welcome, man. And many don't even know about the regime change that America did in Iran in 1953. Yeah, they don't. And how did that turn out, bold as a lion? It lasted, was it 15 years? Within one generation, it was right back to the Iranian regime. We have other allies in the Middle East besides Israel. I think we need to get out of NATO. I agree, Infidel, absolutely. Glenn despises NATO. It is BS. Enough is enough. America first, but Trump failed on that. Yep, he did. He failed. I also don't like NATO. They don't do shit. They definitely don't. Bro, F South Korea, says Traveling Lamp. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We have to kind of keep good relations with South Korea because of China. And by the way, this bothers me to no end, by the way. Excuse me. This has always been my argument, even last year when I still kind of was trying to stay Israel neutral and identify as Israel neutral, which is so hard to do, by the way. Within just 5 months of starting this channel last March, I was reading stuff, I was looking at stuff. I hadn't paid close attention to politics before creating this channel, and it doesn't take long until you see this. And then you're like, well, they're like big pharma, there's probably some corruption, but I understand they're lobbying for the interest of their country. They're this tiny country in the Middle East. Everyone wants their destruction. So you try to give them excuses at first. And then this happens this year, and that's the final straw for me. I am no longer Israel neutral, right? But when it comes to China, this was always my argument last year when I was trying to stay Israel neutral. We need to shift. We need to shift our priority and focus away from the Middle East, which is not an imminent threat to us. The Middle East, there's nothing there. It's oil, sure. There's terrorists, yes. But, everyone always talks about Americans dying because of terrorists. And it's yeah, that's because we send them there. What happens if we don't? Well, a lot of these countries don't have a good air force. Some don't have an air force at all. It was embarrassing the way Biden pulled out of the Middle East, but it was even more embarrassing to read some of the reports afterwards that they tried launching some of our fighter jets and immediately crashed them. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They can't reach us. They don't have nuclear power. They don't have nuclear warheads, and their ballistic missiles couldn't reach us. Where our priority should be shifting is to the Indo-Pacific region, once again, and it should be shifting there because of China. We should be looking at Taiwan. We should be looking at South Korea. Instead, what happens with this Middle East conflict, don't call it a war, because Trump will get impeached then. So it's just a conflict or an excursion. I like how Trump called it an excursion. And when you look up the definition of an excursion, you understand it actually implies that, yes, Israel forced this, which is even funnier. But what do? Well, we pull a THAAD system out from the Orient. We pull it out from near South Korea, which is no doubt why they're more pissed at us. And that was supposed to be pointed at China. That was supposed to be for the sake of defending against China. And we pull it out there because Israel needs it now. Another big problem. This only benefits Israel, and this is only about Israel, is the bottom line. I believe our intelligence, I believe Tulsi Gabbard, I believe our intelligence reports that Iran never had nuclear warheads. This is Iraq 2003 all over again, and Donald Trump has transformed into George Bush, or like I said a couple episodes ago, we're kind of getting that John McCain presidency that we never got, right? It's like making up for lost time. This is neoconservatism again. This is the military-industrial complex. That's why Lindsey Graham jizzed his pants when he found out we are going back to the Middle East. So that's my issue. And, South Korea, I think, might have a right to beef with us a little bit about it because we weakened our defenses there at their expense for the sake of Israel. And Israel's the only one that benefits from this. I'll put it to you even like this. The dynamic is as such. We give all this funding to Israel. We support them. We defend them. And the most sickening thing to see is you'll see pro-Israel lobbyists online say, Israel is what keeps America safe. Israel's the front lines to fighting Islam. Without Israel, there's no America. I've literally seen that. That is so delusional, it's not even funny. If I snapped my fingers and we disappeared, America was gone, Israel's gone within days. They're conquered, it's over, right? We saw NATO's response. They don't care about Israel. They're not going to help us open up the strait. They're probably angry that we sided with Israel again, and we're goaded into another Middle East war because of them. Nobody cares about Israel except us. If America disappears right now, Israel's gone within days. They stand no chance of existing without us. If Israel disappears, if I snap my fingers right now and Israel's gone, I wake up tomorrow and nothing changes here. Yet, for some reason, we spend all this money to Israel, we shed blood for Israel, we defend Israel, but it's not our country. We don't have a stake in a claim of any of it. It's ruled by a government there, Bibi Netanyahu. Why is that? It actually makes no sense. Literally. Like, to be straight up 100% with you, Israel should be ours. That should be America. That would be the only way to justify it. Because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. We don't treat any other ally like that. For good reason. It's expensive and it's stupid. So, that's my problem. Now, the Indo-Pacific, South Korea, trying to make sure at this point, though we're going to be hypocritical for doing so, trying to make sure China doesn't take Taiwan. Japan is the new Israel, by the way. We should stay in Japan's good graces. They clearly want to be in our good graces for the most part, though they disagree with this war so much that even they refuse to help Trump with this. But Japan is going to be our new Israel because China is the actual emerging threat. That's the threat to America. But the reason why we're in the Middle East is because Iran was the threat to Israel, and Israel wants regional hegemony, and it's all about Israel. And it's all about Israel because of the carrot and the stick, like I stated in my video over the weekend. That's the bottom line. That's the real deal. And that's what this is. American jobs for Americans first. Yeah, I agree. The Iron Dome doesn't work, no, it works. I've seen the videos of it. It works pretty good. It doesn't work. It's not 100%, but it works according to reports about 88 at an 88% effectiveness rate, which is pretty solid. But yeah, missiles still get through, and the way Iran counters that, by the way, is just by doing what they do. They put their production for missiles and drones inside of their mountain ranges so it can't be easily destroyed by bombs, and they mass produce missiles. And essentially the logic is, well, if the Iron Dome takes out 88 missiles out of 100, we'll just launch 1,000. Because if 12 out of every 100 get through, then 120 out of every 1,000 get through. And they're cheap. And so you do see the videos of the missiles breaking through the Iron Dome, because if you launch enough of them, the Iron Dome can't shoot them all down. That is reality. So that's how that works. They are a third world country and can't even fly. They really can't, Glenn. It's embarrassing. Like Biden was such a fucking moron about pulling out of the Middle East. He left all of that equipment for them, and that will come back to bite us probably, but certainly not with the fighter jets. They literally can't fly them. I remember literally reading a report that there was like some sort of fucking Muslim pilot that crashed and was like super injured because he got into a fighter jet and insisted he knew how to fly it, and he literally took it off and crashed like 2 minutes later. Like, it's that bad. Like, that's why I don't buy the threat. Glenn, Iran is not a third world country. Ballistics, drones, and more. Definitely not third world. There's a lot of like countries that are shit. Like you call maybe a second world country. You know, they're certainly not a first world country. Jimmy Talks did a great vid on Zionism. Hey, welcome, Tom. Bold as a lion. Compared to the U.S., most countries are third world. Yes. Free Palestine, says Abu Damed. Iran is a third world country versus USA, especially in military. And each Iron Dome interceptor costs in the millions. Iran's missiles are cheap, exactly. Yes, it's true. And it is a numbers game, bold as a lion. That's how it works. And it is a numbers game. And the Iron Dome interceptors are limited. And according to a lot of reports we're seeing, it's already running pretty low. So I think U.S. and Israel did bite off more than they can chew. And Glenn's right. Like, our military, we can crush Iran over time, but it's not going to be cost-free. It's going to be expensive. People are going to die on both sides. We don't want American lives being lost in this Middle East war, and it would take a lot of time. This could be another multi-year war if that's what it turned out to be, and we're literally trying to avoid that. I literally don't believe that America can sustain another multi-year Middle East war. Iraq was already so fucking expensive. We can't keep doing this. But ultimately, yes, our military is far superior. It's just Iran has the ultimate cheapo cheese strategy of ballistic missiles and drones. Calling Iran a third world country is coping. I'm not saying they're a third world country. I'm just saying I wouldn't call them a first world country. They're like a second world country. They're an in-between. They're certainly not a superpower. They don't have the nuclear warheads. They're like a mid-tier power. And a mid-tier power is not to be underestimated, and unfortunately that's what this administration did, I think. They insist they didn't, but I insist they did at this point. I think it should be pretty clear to most people that they underestimated Iran. Let me show you guys something here. Why would our NATO allies why would they not want to help us? I found this video to be so fascinating. I wanted to pull it up. This is an example of what the messaging looks like behind this war. This is a compilation of Trump within 1 hour of delivering. It's all within 1 hour. You'll see the timestamps on it. Here, take a look. This is the messaging. Take a look at this.
We haven't needed help.
Hang on, let me make sure it's pulled up. Yeah, okay.
They won't be there for us. If we haven't needed help, they won't be there for us. I've just known that for a long period of time. We have some that are really enthusiastic. They're coming already. This is a need. Need would be one of the big boys. If we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of a situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us. We want them to come and help us with the strait. My attitude is we don't need anybody. We're the strongest nation in the world. We have the strongest military by far in the world. We don't need them.
Okay, so it's like, what is it? Do we need NATO to help or don't we? It seems like if you give Trump just 10 minutes, he'll change his mind. And that really does fit the overall messaging behind this war. What's this war about? We still don't know. We do know, by the way. That's what I've devoted the last 2 weeks on this channel to literally saying what this war's about. regional hegemony and building a new emerging superpower in the world known as the Greater Israel region. That is obviously the goal. And Israel admits that that's the goal on their end, and it's certainly the goal on our end as a result, right? Since our politicians are clearly being run by Israel. So that's the truth, but that's not what's being said because they can't say that. They know they can't say that. And so instead, you get this insane messaging, and you get this messaging of, well, it was about their nuclear warheads, but then they get called out for that. And you say, well, I thought you said that was destroyed last summer. We did, but there's a chance they still had them. Well, that doesn't fly with Americans. So then it turns into, well, it's about regime change. We need a softer regime because this regime, this current Iranian regime, wasn't willing to work with us anymore. And they had ballistic missiles that could reach our European allies. Come to find out now, fast forward, I'm vindicated once again with my opinions on NATO. Though our European allies were actually at risk of Iranian missiles, and I stated all the while last week and 2 weeks ago, where are they then? It sounds like Europe's problem. How about they handle it? Turns out they don't want to. Turns out they don't want anything to do with this. Why? Because we're the doormat for the world, silly. Us stupid goy Americans can lay down our 18 to 26-year-old young men's lives to protect Europe and protect Israel. Of course. That's what America's all about. Being used and abused and then discarded with. And so that reasoning doesn't work for long, regime change. So they say, well, don't you care about Persian liberation? Well, you'll find with the young generations when it comes to topics like that, especially myself, I'm an open sociopath when it comes to other countries and their people. I don't care about them at all. I feel absolutely nothing internally for the pain and suffering of any other country's citizen. I literally don't care. When Americans are suffering, that's when I get pissed. That's when I care. That's when I feel overwhelming sadness, and that's when I feel demoralized as an American. And that's what's happening right now. What's the death toll for American soldiers? I think it was at 14 the last time I checked. It's probably higher. We know one of the strategies for the Department of War and for our government is to slowly release the news of the deaths. They don't want it to seem like it's surmounting to a lot more. They want to slowly release it so a soldier will die and we'll find out about it next week, basically. So it's probably higher, but 14 is the number I saw last time I looked at it, or 13 maybe. So that's already happening. And Persian liberation just doesn't matter. I don't care about it. Most Americans, if they're honest with themselves, they don't care about it. That's their responsibility to do that. They shouldn't need outside interference to do that. If they want to liberate their own country, they have to do it themselves. That's how it works. And it turns out, by the way, that the Persians and the Iranians, for that matter, whoever makes up the 90 million in population of that country, they're not all that interested. The ground reports that are coming in are basically stating that a lot of Iranians have actually risen up in support of their now dead religious leader, Ali Khamenei. And so they're in support of it. And they're actually, whether they're doing it out of fear or actual genuine sincerity, they're supporting their new Iranian regime leader, and they're protesting now in the streets against the U.S. strikes. At least some of them are, according to ground reports. The ones who Trump wanted to rise up and wanted to take advantage of these strikes in Tehran and overthrow the regime don't seem to have an interest in doing so. So that doesn't work. So then they go back to nuclear warheads, and that doesn't work. And then they go back to regime change, but that doesn't work. And liberation doesn't work. And then next thing you know, one thing leads to another, and the truth starts to slip out. This was an excursion. Marco Rubio says Israel was about to strike first, so we realized we had to strike first. Speaker Mike Johnson echoes that. The messaging is all over the place, and that's what this video just highlighted as well. Well, truthfully, if we call on NATO to help us open the strait, they should jump at the chance. He's not wrong, by the way. They owe us, and I'll stand by that. And then it goes to, well, some countries in NATO, they're already talking about how they're going to do it. And then 15 minutes later, well, truthfully, we don't even need their help, honestly. I mean, truthfully, we're the greatest country in the world. I like the rhetoric, but he's all over the place because there was no plan going into this. This was literally Bibi Netanyahu visiting our country 7 times in 1 year to goad Trump into doing this, and then essentially taking Trump's hand and yanking him back to the Middle East and forcing him to do it. No planning, just all done on a whim, it seems like almost. Maybe some planning all year long on Bibi's part, but on Trump's part, I don't know. I think a part of Trump felt like he could avoid this and didn't have to follow through on it all the way. But I think very clearly what happened was during Trump's campaign for the second administration we're now living under, he probably made a deal for all of the increase in Israel funding and campaigning that we saw on behalf of a lot of the Jews here. Mark Levin, who was a never-Trumper. Ben Shapiro, who was a never-Trumper. The massive shift. Miriam Adelson, who only donated $20 million to Trump in his first term in 2016, has now donated over $200 million, I believe it is. Or maybe it's $134 million. I think it's more and more every time I check is basically the bottom line. And it equates to either 5 or 10%, or I'm sorry, not 5 or 10%. 5 to 10x the amount that she did in his first term. She's way more supportive of Trump now than she was in his first term. Why is that? So I think a deal was probably made, and that's what we're living under right now, in all honesty. And I think Trump thought that he could probably, the strikes last summer, for instance, I think was Trump's way of trying to live up to whatever deal was made behind closed doors. But of course, that's not going to satisfy Israel. They want the regional hegemony, and in order to obtain that, Iran needs to be destroyed or weakened to the point of where it cannot resist Israel anymore. So here we are back again. And I stated over the weekend, too. I said, you know what, I think a big strike's coming. It didn't turn out to be that way. I was wrong. You won't hear me say that much. Although Karg Island was attacked, but we actually purposely did not attack the main oil infrastructure on the island. We left it standing, and we struck it more as a warning. I predicted a big strike would happen and that Trump would claim victory because he knows he needs to pull out. Because the bottom line is he does. Midterms are approaching, and this war is political poison. Boots on the ground would really seal the deal. And I already think it's too late anyway, but they're going to try to be delusional and optimistic about it and say, well, if we pull out soon, we can still win the midterms. They're going to think that. They have to. And so my hypothesis is, well, maybe they're not going to pull out as soon as I thought they would, but they'll have to pull out eventually because of midterm pressure. And then they'll just revisit it after the midterms in 2027, truthfully. And that'll either happen willingly by this administration, or perhaps via a false flag attack, or because of a genuine Iranian attack, if that's possible. And we'll never really know. But we'll never know if it's a false flag or an Iranian attack. Hopefully it's neither, of course. But that's what I think is likely to happen at this point. And that's what's on the line right now when it comes to all of this. We're not done in Iran. Even if Trump pulls out soon, and his base will then take to X and say, see, he said 4 to 5 weeks. You panicins. We'll be back. We'll be back until that Iranian regime is destroyed to Israel's liking. And there's just no way around that. That is absolutely the truth behind this. So it's no wonder I posted this on my X today. MAGA is dead, and it was killed this year, right? So is it too late for them to win the midterms? Yeah, I think it is. They have to think it isn't, and they're probably going to make some decisions based off that soon. But I put this on my X. I said, vote Republican in 2026 if you are okay with still no deep state arrests, but want to see Tucker Carlson go to prison. Because, yeah, Tucker Carlson's being investigated now, funny enough, by the CIA. They're reading his text. They seem to be trying to create a criminal case against him. They're claiming that he's a foreign agent living in America and acting as an activist for possibly Iran or something. So no deep state arrest from Pam Bondi and this miserable DOJ who can't seem to bring justice about for the American people, especially for the people who voted for Trump. But when it comes to Tucker Carlson, a conservative right-wing speaker, well, he's being investigated to the max, so much so that they're viewing his text messages without even asking him to. So vote Republican if you want that. Vote Republican if you think Joe Kent, a former Green Beret who did 11 tours in the Middle East, is a traitor, but Mark Levin, a fat Jew, is a MAGA patriot. Vote Republican in 2026 if you hope that the Epstein files never fully get released because you believe they're a hoax anyway. Vote Republican in 2026 if you voted for mass deportations, but it actually turns out you're happy that Trump stopped committing to them, and you're even happier that he's welcoming more H-1B visas and expansion programs for them when it comes to immigrants in this nation to help out our farmers. Because Americans don't want to do those jobs. Vote Republican in 2026 if you voted for no new wars, but you love the fact that we are entering a new Middle East forever war with Iran. Vote Republican in 2026 if you love the idea of a rising housing market costs and 50-year mortgages. Vote Republican in 2026 if you believe Israel should come first. And then, of course, if you don't believe in those things, then clearly you probably shouldn't vote Republican in the midterms this year. MAGA is dead. And that's the bottom line. And all of that is to lead me to this too. I wanted to point this out real quick as well. What we're seeing right now when it comes to America and our political system and how our politicians are subservient to Israel, that's going to change, and I've been saying that's going to change. And this poll really confirms that, right? So you see in the age range here, the popularity and the shift from the year 2023 to the year 2026, young voters' views on Israel have turned sharply, leading to declines across age ranges. It's now declining across all age ranges, actually, even the boomers slightly. So with age 18 to 34, that's the bracket I fall under. You can see in 2023, 26% had a positive view of Israel, 37% negative. That is now 63% negative. It's getting close to doubling. And only 13% have a positive. So that's actually shrunk in half. Age 35 to 49, you can see in 2023, 34% of age 35 to 49-year-olds had a positive view of Israel. 33% had a negative view. Now, there's a gray area on this poll, of course, and that stands for neutral, which is what I would have fallen under in 2023, by the way. Now, in 2026, that number has shrunk from 34% approving to just 20% in that age range of 35 to 49. And it's increased from negative views at 33% in 2023 to 43%. Ages 50 to 64, you can see in 2023, that age brackets had a 59% positive view of Israel and only a 15% negative view. And now, in 2026, only 37% of the age 50 to 64 age range has a positive view, and 30% have a negative view. The negative view has doubled in 3 years. And then even in 65 plus, the boomers were at 64% positive in 2023. That number's only 55% now. And in 2023, only 12% had a negative view on Israel. In 2023, that number's at 21%. Again, almost doubled. So that goes to say, like I've been saying on this channel now for a few days, this was a massive gamble that Israel and Trump have taken. And Israel's taken it knowing that this bridge is burning. And rather than trying to repair that bridge, and rather than trying to improve their image and their positive, the way they're viewed here in America, they've decided to burn the bridge down and go all in on this. And that's why it must succeed. And that's what makes this kind of funny, is it's not succeeding. It's failing miserably. And it's costing them even more popularity here in America. The future is millennial and Gen Z, not boomers. By 2028, and especially by 2032, boomers won't even majority represent us anymore. They'll be more out of power, they'll be dying off, and the younger generations will be getting their hands on power for the first time and becoming more represented here in America. So expect these numbers to show up more in our politics when that happens. Israel certainly is, which is why they've probably felt the pressure and the need to do this now. And that's also why, in my opinion, we're not leaving the Middle East anytime soon. Even if it does get put on pause this year in the name of midterms, we will be back. That's a prediction. We will be back. If it gets put on pause, you'll see the MAGA cultists celebrate it. They'll accuse people like me of being a panican. And they'll say, oh, you just couldn't see Trump's 5D chess game. I saw today when it comes to NATO, I saw MAGA cheerleaders that are saying this was Trump testing our NATO allies to see if how they would respond. This is Trump playing global 5D chess. Now he knows who our friends are and who they aren't. It's like, what the fuck? Literally nobody came to our aid except possibly Britain. What do you mean? This is an embarrassment. This is not a test. This is an embarrassment. Okay? But that's what they'll accuse me of. And then in 2027, we'll be back after the midterms. However they go, we'll be back. Now, if the midterms are blue, Trump will have a harder time doing this because Congress will finally start to demand, if it's a majority blue Congress, they'll demand that they declare war as the permission for Trump to go there. And they'll also hit Trump with impeachment. So that'll actually make it harder to return in that region, which is why I won't be voting Republican this year when it comes to congressmen or senators. I want that to go blue, and I do want Trump to be impeached. So, because if that happens, that lowers our chances of going back to the Middle East once again. If we even pull out of there. There's also a chance, by the way, that we just don't even pull out. Trump says 4 to 5 weeks. Pentagon reports say we're preparing to stay there until September if needed. That's 2 months away from midterms as it is. If we're there in September, we're probably just going to stay there at that point. So, who knows? It's all a roll of the dice. And with this administration, it's a roll of two dice. They're gambling even harder. 50-year mortgages and sky high house prices. Oh yeah. We're in the golden age, Glenn. Can't you feel it, man? Back fan says, reporter, of this is about nuclear weapons. Why did we bomb an upper-class girls' school? Trump, we need to fight the educated women over there so we don't have to fight them here. That's dank. That is dank. I don't agree with 25 cents being wasted, says John Boy. Neither do I. Not another penny to these foreign countries. It should all be here, staying here, and going towards Americans, John Boy. Trump definitely unified them. Yeah, he might have. Well, that's the other thing. We haven't seen Iran pull out their other card yet, which is, of course, the Houthis and Hezbollah. They haven't even used them yet. We gotta wait to see how that plays out, right? Bold as a Lion says, our country is sold out. It's so messed up. I'm looking at my brother's folded flag as I type this, and people that have no clue what real loss feels like due to war, just cheer it on, says Bold as a Lion. Yeah, man, and I remember you told me in the chat a couple nights ago, you lost your brother in the war, so yeah, it hits you harder, and rightfully so, man. And that's what I try to think like that. I don't have a brother I've lost in a war, and I didn't fight in the Middle East wars or anything, so... but I try to think about it from that perspective. It's important. I go to my gym now, and there's Gen Z guys that are fear-mongering over a draft. And I can't say 100% that it won't happen. I don't think it's likely. But, they're fear-mongering over that. And then the worst part is, and you can't blame them for this either, they're basically saying if I got drafted, I would draft dodge. Because, first of all, Trump did it. Bill Clinton did it. Like a lot of presidents have done it. They've draft dodged on top of it. But they don't want to die for Israel. And that's the bottom line. And I can't blame them. I actually agree with them in that regard. Of course, you should never draft dodge. Can't advocate for that on this channel. But that's what's happening. And I hear that a lot. Sick from the Kush says, this is a weird point people bring up now. Why is it a strategy to say, look, the kids think this. Clearly they're the wisest. Sick from the Kush. Well, here's the deal. Politics in this country needs to be operated, actually, from what the young generations think. Do you know why? Because we're the future. What we're seeing right now is an administration who's acting as the boomers' last gasp. Everything Trump does benefits the boomers who are going to be dead in 10 years, and it's being done at the expense of the young generations. Ultimately, it's greed and selfishness, and it deserves to go punished. And as a young person myself, I genuinely hope to live to see the times that are hopefully ahead of us, where Trump is impeached, possibly from office. The Republicans lose in devastating fashion when it comes to Congress and the Senate. All of the corruption within this administration is prosecuted and done so in a persecutory manner. I want to see these administrative members of Trump's administration. I want to see them suffer consequences for their actions, for this corruption. Trump is doing everything to benefit boomers. The stock market is the economy. Who does that benefit? Boomers. He wants rising house prices. Who does that benefit? Boomers who own homes. He wants a war in the Middle East. Boomers like that shit, right? The cost of living, I actually meant to pull that up and I don't have it ready. Kevin Hassett today, one of Trump's members in the economic wing of his administration. Kevin Hassett today acknowledged that a prolonged event like this, if this becomes prolonged, he acknowledged that it shouldn't hurt America all that much, but then he did say, as a side point, well, the American consumer would be hurting from this. And then he literally said, acknowledging this would affect our cost of living horrendously, and that the American consumer, he said, well, this won't hurt America, but, well, the American consumer would be hurt from this. But then he literally follows that up by saying, but that's the last of our priorities right now. Who does that benefit? Boomers. They're already insulated. They've worked their entire lifetime. And not only that, but boomers are so stupid that they grew up in the easiest of economic times in the 80s, and most of them are still fucking poor. And they can't live without Social Security entitlements and Medicare. They're the dumbest generation of all time. And why? Because they had it easier than their parents, and now they have it easier than their children. They grew up in such easy times, and then they try to tell us how they struggled. So why would we listen to them? They can't even tell you how to succeed. To them, succeeding is getting a factory job for 40 years, saving $350 every other week for 20 months, and then buying a house in cash, and then saving up for another year and buying a car in cash. So what are you talking about? Why would we listen? Why would we listen to the youth? Gee, I don't know. Because the youth is the future? That's what I liked about Rupert Lowe. He's in the Restore Britain party overseas, and I just rewatched his campaign video. 7 minutes that everyone should check out. You should be looking for that in future politicians. Rupert Lowe, an old guy in touch with reality. And he makes the greatest point that he believes being raised on a farm and being a farmer in Britain has given him the right perspective on how to think. He said on the farm, we don't think in terms of what did he say? Prosperity. We don't think in terms of materialism or prosperity. We think in terms of generations. That's how our politics should be done and carried out. It's not about boomers anymore. They're dying. Their generation is hitting the deceased line. They've had their time. They're in the autumn of their life. And most of them are quickly getting to the point where they don't even positively contribute to society anymore. They're actually technically a detriment. If they're on Social Security, which is unsustainable, if they're on Medicare, which is a handout, socialism basically, they're a detriment to society for the most part. Right? Beck fans in my chat, he told me to even look it up. He said, look at the cost that goes into keeping these boomers alive in the last 8 months of their life when they have serious health issues. The cost for those last 8 months alone would pay for the housing market crisis that young millennials and Gen Zers are currently going through. So they're a detriment to our society right off the bat. That's just the reality of it. That's dank, that's callous to say, but it's true. Not to mention, like I said, they don't really know. They're stuck in the 1980s. All of their wisdom is outdated. It does not apply today. They didn't deal with AI. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything, really. Truthfully, they don't. And then they try and tell you that they struggled because they had to walk 2 miles to school every day. Give me a break. So now you have people like Trump, who just thinks about benefiting the boomers for some reason. Trump's stuck in the 80s as well. He's out of touch. And that's why I like Rupert Lowe and the Restore Britain Party. He says, think about it in terms of generations. And when you think about it in terms of generations, you look at everything differently. You treat everything way differently. It's not about getting short-term gain. It's about setting up for the future. It's about ensuring that the young generations who will keep this country where it needs to be. That's me. That's a lot of my viewers now. That's Gen Z. That's Gen Alpha. That's what it's actually all about. And so, yes, you should listen to the young generations when they say, hey, how come the average age of a home buyer for boomers was 28, but most millennials aren't even thinking about buying a home until 35, and a lot of them aren't even buying homes until they're 39. Why is that? Do you have an answer to that? No, of course you don't. Hey, how come boomers were able to have a one-income household and afford 2 cars and a house and kids, and I can't even afford rent anymore, and I'm 33? Why is that? When somebody says that, why is that? That's what we should be listening to, truthfully. And these are the future voters. Like I said, every year we go now, boomers are dying more. That means less voters. And so for Trump to focus so heavily on conservative boomers, it's foolish. For Republicans to do that, it's foolish. There's going to be less of them voting every year. Now, with young people, it's the opposite. And so, yeah, you should be getting their feedback, you should be listening to them, and you should be appealing to them. They're the future. They're what's most important in this country. And may I keep this mindset as I age. May I never live to be as selfish as the most disgusting generation of all time in this country, the boomers. May I never get to a point where I talk down on the young generations like the boomers did to me when I was 12 years old. Not even experienced, I didn't even know what life was yet. And I was already being set up for, you're the most selfish, entitled, disgusting generation of all time, you millennials. I don't get what's wrong with you guys. Gee, I don't know. Maybe that's just projection from the boomers. That's what it turned out to be. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't even know why I was being told that. I was 12. I was learning like algebra in math class in 8th grade. And I was already being told my generation was the worst. I'll never do that to Gen Z. And I've said that before. I actually think Gen Z men will save America. And I'll never do that to Gen Alpha either. Even if they turn out bad. You got to understand every generation has a unique set of difficulties and benefits to work with, and that includes boomers. The boomers' difficulty was they were the most psyoped generation of all time, and for that I feel genuine sympathy for them. They bought into feminism, individualism, sexual liberation. They bought into all of this crap. They bought into selling all of our birthright overseas for a short-term, cheaper economy. Produce it in China. It'll make the cost of living cheaper for you, boomers. It'll catch up to your children, of course, who now can't find a job and have to pay more than ever, and China steals their IP, and China's now been built up into this economic potential powerhouse that can rival us. But at least in the 80s and 90s for you boomers, it'll be cheaper. All a psyop. Immigrants are good. PSYOP, the Immigration Act of 1965. Pre-1965, America was 91% white and over 90% Christian. Now look at it. So it was all PSYOP, and I feel genuine sympathy for the boomers in that regard. I do. But they're also the most disgusting and just absolutely ridiculous generation to deal with, and we're done with their advice. We're done with their rhetoric. We're done with being told we're lazy. It does not apply. I own 2 businesses. I've worked 3 jobs before. Okay? It does not apply. I know what's best, and I've had to find out all of this for myself. It's not the boomers who told me how to do this. I do it. So, and if you need any more evidence of that, look at James Fishback, a 31-year-old millennial running as governor of Florida, attracting all the youth. He wants to put a sin tax on OnlyFans. On OnlyFans girls making money and contributing to the degradation of our society, sexual degeneration. He wants to put a 50% sin tax on OnlyFans girls. Boomers don't even fucking know what I'm saying right now. OnlyFans? What's that? And the ones that do, by the way, they're the ones that need Social Security because of OnlyFans, because they blow all of their money on OnlyFans whores. But most boomers don't even know what that is. I had to explain to my mom and dad what OnlyFans is. They don't get it. And they don't understand why I have such a negative view on women. And then I tell them, and then, then I have to hear some nonsense cope about, well, church girls don't do whatever, right? But then they at least understand the problems. But boomers off the bat don't even know what that is. They would never even think to do that, right? James Fishback in Florida, running for governor, he wants to make it so that if marriage is ending in divorce or whatever, and the party, whichever party committed adultery in that divorce, loses everything. A boomer will never think to implement such a law. A boomer is not concerned with common marriage laws or divorce laws, etc. James Fishback's all over it. That's what we need more of. It's the young people, especially young men. It needs to be young men, not women. Women don't belong in politics, okay? Unless they're in the role of an ambassador. Look pretty, speak softly, be charming, be beautiful, and go with, 3 women and 1 guy. Go to Switzerland and chat them up and flirt away and maintain good relations. Women are fine there. That's okay. But women don't belong in politics. Men do, and James Fishback's a prime example of that. Young men do. And we need more of that. We actually need age limits on our politics. We need nobody under age 65 serving in office. They're out of touch, they're old, and they increasingly become more selfish and senile is what we're seeing. So, that's my stance on that. The cost of living is look it up, Glenn. I should have had the video pulled up when it came to Kevin Hassett. I meant to, but then I was like, oh man, if I don't go live right now, Glenn's going to be spamming the chat about how I'm late again. So I was like, I'll just go live, and then I forgot. But yeah, Kevin Hassett, the least of the consumer American being hurt by a prolonged war in the Middle East. Well, yeah, that would happen, but that's the last of our concerns right now. Kevin Hassett. He was a potential I think he is becoming the Fed chair in May, or he was the potential candidate for it. Absolutely ridiculous. And then they bought vacation homes. Yeah, they do. They pull the equity out of their now $500,000 homes, these boomers, which is why the average age median home buyer 20 years ago was age 39. Now it's age 59. The same people buying homes 20 years ago are buying them now because they have these homes that they bought for cheap, and they're pulling equity out of it at $500,000 and buying a lovely Florida vacation home. By the way, James Fishback has an answer for that too, which I like. Do you know what it is? It's called no property tax for Florida homeowners, because you don't rent your home to the government. You buy your home and you own it outright. However, James Fishback has imposed this. If you own a vacation home in Florida, but you live in New York a halfway part of the year, and you're a New York resident, you will pay extra in property taxes. I actually agree with that. Those homes are for Floridians. And you have these crusty-ass boomers that buy their second vacation home down there, which is fine, but now they should pay property taxes down there. They don't live there. That I actually like. Again, would a boomer think of that? No. A boomer would do that in reverse. A boomer would say, hey, Where's these fucking millennial homeowners in Florida? They need to pay more property taxes so that way I can pay less. Let me try to write a legislation on that. That's what a boomer politician would do. They're selfish and disgusting. Sick from the Kush says, they're not all the future, man. Most of the youth are just as stupid as you just said about the boomers. It's weird to chop the approval rating up by age. It's not weird at all. It's actually how it should be looked at. There's a massive generational gap happening right now, and what you're not understanding is we're in what's called the fourth turning right now. You need to look up that term and familiarize yourself with it. And the fourth turning is always symbolized by the old generation filled with the soft men who have produced the hard times, desperately trying to hold on to their principles and their virtues and their institutions. They're trying to hold on to it, but it's like gripping sand. And the harder they squeeze, the more of it they lose. And the young generation is up and coming, and it's inevitable. Gen Z is inevitable. It's happening. And I'm the millennial, but I'm a very young millennial, close to the Gen Z. And millennials, young enough millennials are on board with this too. Millennials are a mix and mix. They truly are the boomers' children, so some millennials are so gay. But you find with young millennials like myself especially, I notice, they're more in line with Gen Z. So I'll say it. We are coming up, and we are actively looking to destroy the way of life that the boomers imposed upon us. Sexual liberation is terrible for society. That needs to come to an end, right? Feminism is horrendous for society. That needs to come to an end. Globalism must never be permitted. It's Americanism, not globalism. That's our credo. That was a Trump campaign speech. That's what we stand for. The boomers are fighting it every step of the way. It's always the boomers who try to tell you, well, the immigrants deserve a chance at a good life here, and we're a nation of immigrants. No, we're a nation of settlers, and we don't owe anybody from any other country a shot at a good life. If they are to come here, they owe us. And they owe it to us by making our country better. Learn English and contribute to society. At this point, though, we need to shut down immigration anyway. It's about Americans. And again, boomers are not on board with that. Boomers are a liberal generation. And the more I talk with them, the more I realize how stupid they are. And they are stupid. I appreciate the answer overall, Sick from the Kush. Hey, you know what? The open discourse, the questions one I'm very passionate about. And I can respect that you're not losing your cool over it. A lot of people would be steaming in my chat by now, but I appreciate you, I appreciate you asking it. It's a good question. I think it's an important question. I actually think it's potentially the most important topic to discuss when it comes to society and when it comes to our politics currently, because I don't believe conservatives understand this fully. I don't think they recognize the fracture that's occurring, why it's occurring in the party. I don't think they recognize the massive divide in generations right now. The line is here, and you have Xers and boomers, and then you have millennials and Gen Zers. I don't think they get that, because the quality of life is drastically different above the line for Xers and especially for boomers. You may as well add another line in, because Xers sometimes come down under that line to side with us even. It's the boomers truly that are standing alone. They're in their own paradise world, it seems, for the most part. And then I get cool ones in my chat, like Howard Drag is one of the names I remember. He's a cool boomer, and he admits it, and he says, yeah, I understand. Life sucks for you guys. And even my parents, I've talked with them, they do get it. They understand. I've explained it to them more, and they still are delusional about stuff when I talk with them, but they do understand. They understand it. They know rent is ridiculous right now. They know it's hard to find a house right now. You explain real wage growth to them and why it's different, because they all, the argument is always, well, inflation always happens. It's like, yes, but real wage growth has not kept up with inflation. So you could buy a home in the boomer age for roughly 3 times more what you would earn per year. It made it easy to buy a home. Now it's over 5. It's almost 6 times the amount. You have to own almost 6 times the amount per year to afford a home. It's outrageous. Real wage growth did not keep up at all. So some boomers understand. And I always say this too, it's not about singling out a boomer to make them feel like shit and say it's all your fault. It's not. Us millennials will be blamed for people like Zohran Mamdani being elected as mayor up in New York City. I didn't have anything to do with that, but it's a generational responsibility thing, is how it's being speaked. So it's generalized. That's important to state as well. The reason you can't afford rent at 33 is because you spend $3 a day on energy. Damn it, Glenn. I do, man. And I don't know how you know every time. You just seem to call me out on it. I don't, I don't know how you know. I really don't understand how you know that I buy these energy drinks all the time. And that is, truthfully, I mean, my God, if I could just stop spending $3 a day on my C4 energy drink, I'd probably own 2 homes like the boomers. Oh, God. God, what a fucking idiot I am. Oh, I can't believe it. I get sick from Kush agreeing with you. He's like, yeah, the answer is often personal accountability. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Glenn, your takes today are way off, says Bold as a Lion. Come on now. What's Glenn saying that's wrong? He's being sarcastic. Oh, okay, gotcha. He just didn't recognize the sarcasm. That happens. It does happen that way. Beck Fan says... Sick. Wait, Sick. I didn't mean to dunk on you, man. Listen, I appreciate you, all right? I appreciate the thought. I appreciate the discourse. And you just happened... I think this is your first time on my stream. You should subscribe, by the way. I would welcome you back anytime in American Advocates chat. Be sure to subscribe to American Advocates, especially if you like the messaging or appreciate that I think that much about it. Subscribe, like the stream, yada, yada, yada. I appreciate it, though. You know, you didn't lose your cool. You didn't resort to ad hominems and be like, listen, you're just a fucking moron, young kid. You don't get it. I didn't mean to dunk on you. It's your first time here, so you're not aware. But that's a topic I've discussed at length like several times already. And I've only been going live for a month and a half. But it's one I'm passionate about. I do believe in. I speak with the convictions because I genuinely believe that that's a problem. I genuinely do. I think the generational gap is a big problem. And I do feel like as a younger person, I won't say I'm young anymore. I'm in my 30s, so I have 1 foot left in my youth, but it's being dragged over the line, right? But I will say I don't feel represented by my politicians, and I feel like the boomers are still way more overrepresented. So that's why I'm passionate about it. But I'm not dunking on you or like, oh, you're an idiot, Sick. I don't think that at all, man. I appreciate the question. It gave me the chance to get fired up, and I actually like getting fired up. Hey, Dial Up, welcome, man. You're here at the tail end, though, Dial Up, but welcome. According to Grok, average end of last year of life in America right now, the medical, 5,000 to 32,000. The nursing home, 114,000 to 136,000. Hospice, 59,000 to 67,000. That's in their last year of life. That's from Beck Fan using Grok to pull those numbers. Glenn says, so I'm getting the feeling the host appreciates the boomers and looks up to them as mentors. Absolutely. Absolutely. Doug Mart. Hey, Doug Mart, I recognize you. So far, you have hated on old people and women. Go for the trifecta. Go for Jews. I've already done that, so you just missed that part of it, Doug Mart. But I promise you I'm very consistent. Glenn says, late is on time here. That's kind of true. For the host, not for... that's even more true, yes. I'm never late or early. I arrive precisely when I mean to. Doug Mart says, Doug Mart, oh, shush, you don't get the point. I think Doug Mart does get the point. I understand exactly what he said. Yes, good. I'm glad that it's been presented clear to you, Doug Mart. Bold as a Lion says, we're all tired. We're not meant to live in constant war, unaffordability, and massive deception and lies. I agree. Thanks for the thoughtful answers. Thanks for the question, Sick Mart, or Sick from the Kush. I appreciate you, like I said. Dial Up says, we allow just over 1 million illegals a year. That's the spirit of America. Get in line. No, I think the spirit of America now is to not allow any legals. You said 1 million legals. The spirit is to shrink that number down way more. Way more. I would say 0. Shrink it down to 0 for the next 20 years. Jeremy Jones says, I agree. Boomers are idiots. You sound like you should subscribe to this channel immediately. I appreciate you agreeing. Doug Mart says, buddies, millennials that are saying that, not so much the elderly. Glenn, people can waste $30 a day on convenience spending, but $10,000 a year doesn't buy a home. Well, this is it. That's also true. Not to mention, I've never used to spend the amount that I spent per day. Now, here's the deal. I'll be super honest, right? I don't buy raw materials to cook from scratch every meal, right? So I spend on convenience. Yes, I buy maybe more pre-made meals to cook for myself. I'm a single guy, okay? I don't belong in the kitchen cooking. That's a woman's job. So that's that. But So I'll admit that I spend a little bit more on convenience, but I'm not like the Gen Z taking out a credit card to spend on DoorDash, for instance. I don't DoorDash hardly ever, unless I'm sick or it's a really rainy, bad weather day or something where I'm like, hey, I may as well make some immigrant be soaked in the rain to deliver my food to me, and then I get to laugh at the idea of it, right? That's worth the money, because I'm literally laughing then for like 30 minutes while my food's being prepared at the thought of some fucking person taking an American's job here being soaked in the rain. That's fine, but that's maybe 3-4 times a year that I DoorDash. Otherwise, I don't order out that much, and if I do, I go pick it up myself. I buy most of my food at the grocery store, is the bottom line. I just don't buy, green onions, ground beef, which is expensive anyway, tuna, ground chicken. I'm not like cooking up a storm, which everyone always insists save money. My argument on that is I'd rather not waste the time. I genuinely do own businesses, and my time is so valuable, in my opinion, even though I'm not getting paid properly for it yet. Hopefully in time I get paid properly for my time. But I'd rather work. So I work all day, I own a business, and then I do YouTube as well. So it's like, I'd rather just buy some food for a little bit more than the individual ingredients to make the food, and heat it up and eat it. So I'm not perfect. I'm not saving at what the boomers insist that they saved at, but you're not wrong. If you spend $30 a day, you still can't cite that truthfully as the reason why you can't own a home, when $10,000 in a year is still not adequate enough to even come close to being able to get a loan for a home. So between energy drinks and I'm not on meth. You're probably spending a lot more than $30 a day. No, I'm actually usually, to be honest with you, I'm probably spending right about $30 a day. Maybe a little less. Probably more along the lines of about 20 to 25 total is what I spend. Eating out is easily a $15 waste. Spending $20 on lunch. Yeah, I don't do that much. I do, I'll buy, for instance, hard-boiled eggs. Like Eggland's Best sells 6 hard-boiled eggs. It sells them for it's like $4. So I'll buy those, and then I'll use free ketchup packets and some salt, and I eat that. That's like my lunch, Maybe I'll buy a protein drink on top of it for, $2. So it's like a $6 meal, and then I'll eat 4 or 5 times a day. So it's like, 24 to $30 a day. That's about what it comes to. But I'm not going, no, listen, I'm not a woman. I don't have long fingernails. I don't, I'm not in the kitchen, so I'm not going to hard boil the eggs myself, okay? And then peel them myself. I'm a guy. That's not what I'm going to do. Women pay for their own bullshit ass stuff, Men pay for convenience. Convenience, you go to a 7-Eleven, you see a lot of men, right? You go to a shampoo aisle and you see a lot of women buying the most ridiculous shampoos. Every shampoo cleans your hair. Women buy the most expensive shampoo. Men go and pay $1 extra for a gallon of milk so they don't have to wait in line. Men are time oriented. Dribble says, when did I say I'm a racist? Just say you're lazy and don't know how to cook. I literally do know how to cook, actually. I actually do know how to cook. I just don't cook because I'm a man. That's not my role. Men shouldn't cook. Men who cook literally dry up their women's pussy. And that's because men who cook have a pussy. Dribble, that was shock humor only. This guy don't know shit. Go enlist and get a Purple Heart in Iran. The world would be better, says Dribble. What a boomer. Dial-up is right. We are the right-leaning people against the insanity. Yep. But fight the phantoms. Why haven't you enlisted yet, tough guy? Oh, such boomer-coded language. What next? Dribble's gonna be my chat next. What are you, chicken or something? What are you a chicken? Chicken. Such boomer coded shit. It doesn't work on me. I'm a guy and I love to cook. I love good food, and I'm not gonna eat at a restaurant every night. Yeah, I don't eat at a restaurant a whole lot, and I am a good cook. I don't believe in cooking. I just think that's what a woman should do. That's an insane take. Well, bold as a lion, you love the insane takes. If I only ever gave the takes that you enjoyed, you wouldn't watch me. Laughing at people who overstayed their visas to work getting rained on is what he construed. Oh, got you. Oh, yeah, well, I do laugh at that. It's funny as shit. Are you kidding me? It'll always be some, like, guy from India on, like, a motorized bicycle, and I order it, and it's, like, borderline hurricane rains. And I'll watch him out my window, and he's, like, soaked. He's literally soaked. And he's, like, gets off his bike, and he's, like, sprinting towards my door. It's fucking funny as shit. It's so funny. It's like, that's what you get for being in this country. That should be an American suffering for that and at least getting paid for it. But it's not. It's objectively funny. It is it literally is objectively funny. Like, that's just, I don't care if they're offended by that. That's literally funny. And I won't order DoorDash on a sunny day. I'll literally order it when it's pouring rain. Okay? Like, I think a lot of people do that, by the way. Maybe not everybody laughs at it, but I certainly do. And I tip them well, so you know what? If I was racist, I would give them a $0 tip. Or even better, you know what I'm going to start doing because of Dribble? I'm going to put a $10 tip on the order, and then as soon as they deliver it, I'm going to call DoorDash and say, they did a terrible job, take the whole tip away. That's what I'm going to do. Because of Dribble, $9.89. Women don't even cook these days. That's true. There's no excuse either. There's so many good YouTube tutorials out there on how to cook. There's literally no excuse. But women don't cook these days because we gave them freedom, and the first thing women decided to do with that freedom was just whore themselves out and objectify themselves sexually. If I depended on a woman to cook for me, I would never eat a good meal. That's sadly probably true. Hold up, we have to talk about this. How many women cook these days? Well, here's the deal, Boulders the Lion. The last girl I did date, I after I was leaving, I even told her, I was like, hey, I'll bring a pizza over next time again. I'll buy a pizza again. And she went, I think I'm just going to start cooking for you. So there's women that, and she did, and there's women that cook. I guess it just, I don't know. Like, that's a nice thing to hear, Personally, I wouldn't date a woman who couldn't cook. That's like an actual, like, that's a deal breaker. My mom was a super good cook growing up. I expect a woman to be a good cook. I think it's actually fair. And when my businesses take off, I'll have even less time. So I need food ready. My goal is to return society back at least to the 1950s. And you know how men used to handle that. If dinner wasn't ready by 5 p.m. sharp, you know how men used to handle that. That's my goal. This guy is so sad, says Dribble. Yeah, I actually do want to see Trump impeached at this point. He forfeited his mandate, and he's absolutely betrayed MAGA. I actually want to see a blue wave. I'm not liberal. I think liberals are the dumbest people on earth, and I think they're subhuman scum. But they'll be a useful tool to the conservatives in America, I think, in the midterms that actually care about this country. So, yeah, Dribble is just shooting air balls. He's grasping at straws. The right would join you, says Dial Up 5583. I think they would. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for tonight, though. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Just rambling on at this point, having fun reading the chats. But thanks, as always, for stopping by. If you haven't already, be sure to like the stream, subscribe to American Advocates for more. And we'll be back tomorrow, no doubt, to cover what will be, I think, day 18 of the Iran war. We'll see what happens. Anything could happen at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if Iran starts striking more during the week as they identify Trump's obvious strategy of waiting until the weekends when the markets close to strike. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing weekday strikes from Iran and weekend strikes from the Trump administration in Israel. So who knows what will happen is the point, but I'll be back live tomorrow at around 7 p.m. It's an earlier time now, which is why viewership's been down, I understand, but my sleep schedule is starting to get fixed because the days are getting brighter again, and I actually am feeling much better. And I actually like going to bed early, before midnight, believe it or not. So 7 p.m. is going to be the new time I strive for every single night. But regardless, like I said, make sure when you subscribe, post notifications are turned on so you're notified every single time I go live. Appreciate my super chatters tonight. Back fan, the super chatter, $5 tariff. Appreciate that. Thank you to the rest of you. It's good to see all the same names in here. Sick from Kush, like I said. Hope to see you back, man. Appreciate you being here. Dial up, take care. Thanks, Glenn, for the excellent moderator work, as always. Episode 43 coming to an end. Now, remember, this will end on a loop, possibly, because I'm streaming from Streamlabs. So don't be deceived if it's looping. YouTube, for some reason, when I stream from a third-party app instead of straight from the YouTube app, it shows I'm live a lot longer than I am for some reason. So I'm just saying this now for anybody who might click on it and tune in and think I'm stuck on a loop. I'm not. I ended the stream, okay? It's over now. Have a great night. Glory to America. God bless the USA, and God bless all of you, except for, what's his name? Dribble? Except for Dribble. Yeah. God bless everyone except Dribble.